Small children who had to step back into the work world. She had been a legal secretary before and was hired by Newman McLean and then assigned, as it turns out, to work for a partner named Charles Rubin. As Nada describes it, we became an item. The senior partners noticed and called a meeting in March 1965 telling him, "It seems to be a serious relationship going on there. If you plan on marrying her, she can't be your legal secretary." And then they dismissed her, so that he would support her financially, and that led them to getting married 3 months later. In hindsight, it looked like the senior partners planned a clever shotgun wedding, but only good things happened afterwards. I asked Nate about her first impressions of Chuck, and she described him as a walking god, incredibly handsome, strong, independent, sexy, and he was single, and he was Jewish. But there was so much more inside him as well. Nada was profoundly aware of the obstacles he had overcome and his internal strength and how he exuded stability and security. He would fit into her Winnipeg social world. He had made wonderful lifetime friends in university and law school, and his friends became their friends. He worked hard and he studied hard and he practiced law with that same fierceness and passion. But he also learned through Nada to shift his priorities. As we know, he became a full-time provincial court judge in 1974, but he had apparently been offered a part-time judge position twice before. When the full-time offer came, Chuck asked Nada what to do. She noted that since they married in 1965, he was almost never at home, working at his law practice until 10 or 11 at night. And then her fateful words, "The children don't know who you are." And those words shifted the trajectory of his life. He listened. He accepted the full-time position. He experienced a dramatic drop in income, but never regretted it for a second. He loved every day of his new life. Nada describes Charles as a man of the common man. That is where he came from, and that was always what he was, wherever he was, at home or at the lake, or in a 10-pin bowling league at Northgate with Nada and my mother, or her law practice, or on the bench. Yes, the bench. We know of how Ruth Bader Ginsburg was influenced by her Jewish upbringing. The words Zedek, Zedek, Todah, justice, justice shall you pursue, were prominently displayed in her office. And Judge Charles Rubin was cut from similar cloth. His Judaism ran deep within him. He had grown up in an Orthodox home, and in Winnipeg he chose Shaarey Zedek as his congregation. He attended Shabbat services regularly, not only when he was synagogue president in the late 70s, but in the years before and after, and he was always available to step in at a moment's notice for any of the twice daily minyans if they were short of the required 10. And his Jewish values came out through his pores, especially in the legal world. A fellow judge reached out to me yesterday to tell me about the string of emails, being circulated through the judicial community about his amazing understanding of human nature, the huge respect held of him by his judicial colleagues and the lawyers who appeared before him. A dignified judge. And I told the family that I was once a young articling student appearing before him, wet behind the ears, and that my first and lasting impression of him was that his was a respectful courtroom, and he was firm but fair. Yes, the family said, that's right, firm but fair. In every respect, Charles lived out our Torah's ideas of what a judge might be. Soon after the Exodus, Moses took the advice of his father-in-law Yitro and appointed judges for the nation of Israel. This was before we received the 10 Commandments. But there was an earlier story that teaches us what justice should look like for those judges then and for judges today. We know the story of Abraham arguing with God about the city of Sodom, God wanting to destroy the entire city, while Abraham arguing to have it saved if there were 100, or 80, or 50, or eventually 10 righteous people in the city. But really, it wasn't an argument. Instead, it was about the interplay between two positive principles, God speaking to justice, and Abraham speaking to mercy. And between those two ideas is where true justice lies. Or in the case of Justice Charles Rubin, it showed up beautifully in modern language as firm but fair. And these values showed up outside the courtroom as well. A quiet story shared about a man who sold donuts outside the law courts. And on Friday every week, as he left the courthouse, Charlie would buy up all his remaining donuts so that this man would have a full week of sales as he went home for the weekend. And at home, those are the values that he taught to his kids. Integrity, how to be a father and a provider. Adam noted, his honor taught me the importance of honor. And Greg noted, remember, the most important asset you have is your name. Never compromise it for a client or for anyone. And finally, the importance of our obligation to others through action. Tzedakah, acts of charity and helping through contributions of time and of money. Early in the service, I offered a reading that used the word mensch. That was intentional on my part, as I found myself thinking about how Charles really saw people around him and how he understood that who he was not based on title or position, but on the impact he could have on the world around him by firstly being true to himself as a means to be true to those around him. The word mensch is a Yiddish expression that I learned from my parents who came from the shtetls of Eastern Europe. And it comes from German, meaning a human being. But in Yiddish, it means a whole lot more. It's a huge compliment. A person of integrity and honor, but most importantly, the greatest attribute that one might hear of a person at the time of their passing. This was to me, and hopefully to you, the essence of who Charles Nathan Rubin was in this physical life. May the life of Charles Nathan Rubin inspire us always, and may his name always be for a blessing. Can you hear what's on? May it be God's will. Before proceeding with the rest of the service, a few notes. Because of COVID-related issues, the family will not be having a meal of consolation or formally sitting Shiva, but please reach out to them. This is the time where we move towards comforting the mourners. This is a time to share stories. Listen to theirs and pass them on. If you know how to reach the family, please do so. If you're interested in making a donation in Charlie's honor, the family has asked that you consider Winnipeg Harvest or a charity of your choice. I'm going to move now to the two final prayers. The first is the El Malei Rachamim, which is truly our prayer of mourning. I'll do Hebrew and an English version as well. It's important we understand the words. And as well, after that, we'll move towards the Mourner's Kaddish. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bamramim, Hamitzei Menucha Nechona, Tachach Kanchei Ashvina, Im Kedoshim Hu Taharim, Bizahar, Harakeya Hamazirin, Et Nishmat, Nisan Shaya Ben Shimon Beyatam, Shalach La'olamo, Baal Rachamim, Yastirehu Beseter Bechanafav La'olamim, Bitzror HaChayim Et Nishmato, Adonai Hu Nachalato, V'yanuach b'shalom al kol mishkavo, v'nomar Amen. May the source of life, the fountain of all being, open our hearts to compassion and our eyes to wisdom, that we might glimpse in perfect peace and sadness the way of all things. May Charlie's memory be for us a blessing, and may we never let the light of his love grow dim in our hearts. May we remember all his worthy and righteous deeds, that his memory be forever bound up in the bond of life. God is our source and our destination, our beginning and our end. May Charles Rubin's death awaken us to this truth, that the bond of love we shared and share not be severed in sorrow. May he rest in peace, and together let us say, Amen. We move now to the Mourner's Kaddish, sanctifying the name of Charles Rubin. We honor his memory with the words of the Kaddish Yatam, the Mourner's Kaddish. I'll ask the family to say the words, but I encourage anybody who chooses to do so, if you feel that sense of loss and grieving, to add your voices as well. At the very least, join us when we say Amen, because that means essentially you've incorporated the whole prayer, okay? It's as if you've said the whole prayer. I will raise my hand when we reach the word Amen, so you know when to step in if you don't know Hebrew, okay? Together. Yitkadal. v'yitkadash shemei Rabah, v'yalma divrach hirute v'yamlich malchute, v'chayechon u'yamechon, u'v'chaye t'chol Beit Yisrael, v'hagalah u'vizman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehi shmei Rabah mevorach le'alam u'lalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei dekudesha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran v'yalma v'imru. Amen. Yehi shlama Rabah min Shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'ramav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. The last two verses, may there be abundant peace from heaven and life for us in Israel, to which we say, Amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us and to all Israel, to which we say, Amen. May we move now to the final act where we close and complete Charles' journey on this physical plane. I'll have a reading first. Al hamakom yavo b'shalom. May Charles Nathan Rubin come to his eternal home in peace. In Jewish tradition, to shovel dirt into the earth is a mitzvah. It is a righteous act which we do without any hope of reward. With this act, we take on the responsibility for caring for our loved one until the very end. Our loved ones deserve to be buried by kind hands, knowing hands, sorrowful hands. You are invited to participate, all of you, in this mitzvah, a painful act. However, one born of love and compassion for those who have meant so much to us. Adonai Natan, v'Adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach. With Job we have said, God you have given, God you have taken away. Blessed be the name of God. May the memory of Charles Nathan Rubin be a blessing as we mark that his essence will never leave our hearts and our souls. We will start with family in a moment, and I'd like to explain the custom. Jewish tradition actually varies from place to place to place. You may choose your own. But here what we typically do is up to 3 shovelfuls of earth and cast them into the grave. Some people choose to do the shovel up, some with the back of the shovel. Go to your own personal preferences along the way. For those of you that are older, if there's anybody much too young, there's a pail here which has a small trowel and which has sand and a small trowel in it, so you can feel free to honor the mitzvah that way as well. There's one thing I will ask of you, and this is probably my custom, and that's that when you do your 3 shovelfuls, do not take the shovel from another person, but rather put it down. For me to accept the shovel from another person makes it an obligation on my part to take on this mitzvah. If I pick up the shovel, it becomes my choice out of an act of love to do so. So I'll ask the family to come forward. And again, may you all go in peace in these days ahead. Please continue. There are several shovels. Feel free to use them all.